Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We welcome you all to this evening's Bhagavad Gita circle. This evening, we'll be reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, text 12, the Yoga of the Supreme Person. And it will be read by His Grace Bhakti Prabhu from ISKCON Harrisburg. And we will go right into it. Haribol.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivachari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Bhagavad Gita chapter 15 text 12. Yad aditya gatam tejo jagat vashayate kilam yat chandra masi yat chadnao tatejo vidiman makam. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and he is giving herewith the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse, we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole universe. There are different universes, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in each universe, there is only one sun. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 21, the moon is one of the stars. Nakshatranam aham shashi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Text 13. Gam avisha chabutani dharayamyaham ojasa pushnami chodahi sarvam chosadi chava somo bhutva rasatmaka. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water, but when this living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet, just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of the dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets which are floating in the air are actually held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in the air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasat maka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Text 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashrita Pranapana Samayukta Panchamyanam Chaturvidham. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life outgoing and incoming to digest the four kinds of foodstuffs. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 5.9.1, also confirm that the Supreme Lord or Brahman is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. Ayam Agni Vaishvanaro Yoyam Anta Purushe Yenadam Anyam Pachete. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuffs, and by his grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Sabda vibhyo inta pratishthanach cha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are four kinds of foodstuff. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. He is the digestive force for all of them. Text 15. Savasya chaham hridisan visto vatasmiti jnanam apohanam cha vidaischa sarva aham iva vidyo vedanta krit veda vidya iva chaham. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And Krishna, in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is a supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is all good. God is all merciful. Anta pravista shastra jnananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits this present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his past life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because the living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo sao save Veda Giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.1.4 confirms this in the following words, Tattu Saman Vayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Text 16. Dva ima purusha loke sharas chakshara evacha shakshar chara sarvani bhutani kutastok shara uchate. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here, the Lord is giving in summary the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities who are innumerable can be divided into 2 classes, fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta, and the Sanskrit words given here, Shara Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living beings. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as the living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. There all exists in oneness. Shara Sarvani Bhutani. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being Brahma down to a small ant, is changing his body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. Let me do one more. Uttama Purush, this is text 17. Uttama Purushastvanya Parama Chetyuda Rita Yalokatrayam Avishya Vibhati Avaya Vivatyavaya Ishvara. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad 2.2.13 and Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.13. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned, some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nitya Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The purport is that amongst all living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one Supreme Living Entity, Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Very well. Thank you so much for very insightful reading and very eye-opening as well. So if anybody has any questions or any comments or any takeaways, we would love to hear them. While everyone is thinking of one, I have a question from Mother Anasuya. She says in verse 15, Srila Prabhupada uses the phrase understanding Krishna many times. What is the process of understanding the Lord and how?
We can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of a spiritual master. Also, the Vedas is provided to understand Krishna. But the Vedas is interpreted and given purports by the spiritual master. The spiritual master is explaining to us how to live. And the proper way to live is to understand that one is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To understand Krishna is also to understand his energies, the superior energy and the inferior energy. This has been explained in other texts apart from text 15. So he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Prabhupada translates, that he is Sarvasya Chaham Hridishanivisto Mataspiti Gyanam Apohanamcha. I'm seated in everyone's heart. From me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So one of the ways to understand Krishna is that all sources of things are from him. Therefore, both the material and the spiritual are from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then there's a little more detail given about those who are in the material world and those who are not. It says that those who are in the material world are fallible. Those who are in the spiritual world are called infallible because they are in unity in service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, understanding the goal that the Lord is to be served. His senses are to be satisfied by our service. So when we understand Krishna in that way, understanding that he is supreme in all respects, and his energies operate, especially that energy, the plenary expansion of the Paramatma operating in the material world, especially that one, very much connected to our lives. Then when we understand that, then we understand who Krishna is as the supreme controller and one from whom everything comes. Anyway, there's also, while we're at it, to throw it in that spiritual world is ever existing is an expansion of Balaram. Balaram is a plenary expansion of Krishna. And the material world is created and annihilated, but the spiritual world is always there. And therefore, the living entities there also don't go through birth and death, just like the material world goes through Mahavishnu, his pores, and then out of his pores, in and out, in and out, in and out. So the Lord is to be understood as the supreme controller and the supreme personality. No one is at this level. And our duty is to realize that we are parts and parcels of the supreme personality of God, separated parts and parcels, and we're supposed to serve him rather than serve our senses in the material world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for giving wonderful answers to that question. There's another question from Madonna Sia, and she's asking, can one aspire to be infallible in the material world? And I think this was based on the 16th text.
Text 16?
Yes.
All right. Can one aspire to be infallible in the material world? One can aspire to go back to Godhead. One can aspire to go back to Godhead. When one is in the material world and they're trying to just live to satisfy their own senses, then of course they definitely are fallible, and not only that, they are an illusion. When a person begins to understand by the mercy and the teachings of Guru and Sadhu and Shastra, the scriptures, that they don't belong to this world, then they can prepare themselves to go back to the spiritual world. Now, the idea of fallible, as long as someone is, a living entity who is a conditioned soul, is in fact in the material world, there's every chance for Maya to be able to tempt a person to pull the person a little bit away from, or sometimes a lot away from the royal path of devotion. So can someone become infallible? You can get close to being infallible, but in the material world, it is actually the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that makes it possible for us to go back. Then we become infallible in the spiritual world. But in the material world, fallibility is there, unfortunately. But the purification is also there if we take the process seriously. Both are there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, any comments, or any takeaways, I'm going down the list. Okay, if there isn't any questions, just want to give a couple of announcements. So tomorrow we'll be celebrating the appearance day of Srimati Radharani at 10 a.m. at the temple. And yes, it will start at 10 a.m. and it will go until 1 p.m. We have amazing class and we'll be singing the glories of Srimati Radharani as well. And this Sunday, we have a special guest, His Grace Devaki Nandan Prabhu, who will be giving class as well. So let me see. So if no one has any questions or comments or takeaways, we want to thank you all for joining for this evening's Bhagavad Gita Circle. Vanchakapatarubhyasya kripasinubhyo Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow. So Radhastami. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai Krishna Prabhupada.